Thank you everyone for coming and supporting us. Anna and Tina, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming and supporting Libri and supporting Anna and Tina. I was lucky to know Anna from a very long time ago, more than a decade ago, when we used to work in Kosovo. I used to work for an NGO for protecting and promoting women's rights. And I was lucky enough to be part of the oral history. I was very young at that time and didn't understand the importance and the magnitude of the project. But now, after so many years, I feel so lucky to have been part of it and to do those interviews. Some of them, they're not among us anymore. You remembered Vabshita and Pazit Nushi, so I'm very grateful for giving the opportunity. And thank you again for being here. We're going to start with questions now. What inspired you, the two of you, to collaborate on The Strongest Link?
Okay, well, I've known Tina for a long time too. I think this is what happens. This is what happens when you're old. You know people for a long time. So it's true that I met Anita more than 10 years ago, but I met Tina 25 years ago. So we go a long way. What made us collaborate? I think Tina and I are very much in synchrony. We agree on most things, and especially politically. And we worked together on the Thinking of You art installation. There was the creative idea of Aketa Jaffa, artist probably you all know. She's from Kosovo, but she is based in London. But Tina at the time was the advisor to the president, Atifete Yayaga. And with Alketa, I came up with this idea how to make this installation. And Tina was really quick in saying, yes, let's do it, and talked to President Yayaga, and the President Yayaga sponsored the installation. Working on Thinking of You, which was dedicated, for those of you who don't know it, consisted in collecting more than 5,000 dresses that were then hung on a clothesline in the stadium of Pristina to honor the women who had been raped during the war. And that work was really extraordinary. In 1 month that we collected all those skirts. Actually, Telenza, was here, also contributed to this effort because we did a collection of skirts even in New York. It was extraordinary. And we met sub-survivors who struck us for their humanity, strength, intelligence. Besides the pain that you saw that they had inside, that was so incredible. And we thought about writing a book about them and making them speak in their own voice.
If I may add, we did come. I mean, we're not new to Kosovo, and we're not new to the context for which this book is written and dedicated to. As Anna said, we come from different corners to this story. Anna was working at refugee camps in Albania during the war. I was a reporter for most part, working for the national newspaper Koha Editore at the time, but also working as a fixer and a translator for many American media that had basically brought the war of Kosovo to the living room of Americans. So it was this story was a story that I don't want to say we did not have knowledge of, because I think it's no secret that rape takes place in every war, but it was not a story that I directly covered. So I think when we met and sort of seeing all these women and becoming friends with the survivors, I think we both felt that it was a responsibility that we document their stories. Did we ever know that it was going to become a book that sort of brings together these, compelling stories and weaves them with the context of what war was like? And probably not. I mean, I don't think I had that vision, but Anna did. Yes, Anna did. And it's amazing to actually hold this book and to know that their stories and their voice made it to the reader. I feel very grateful for that.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. So the title is so powerful. What does the strongest link mean to you personally, both of you?
Well, the idea of this title actually came because there is a book, an Italian book, written many years ago in the 60s by an Italian oral historian who was an intellectual who found himself in the Russian campaign during World War II. And there he met a lot of people, like other soldiers, who were not from his own background. There were peasants, there were workers. And when he came back to Italy, one of the few people who came back from the Russian campaign, he went to visit their mothers and interviewed them. And there were women living in the mountains around Torino, so northern Italy, a part of Italy that people think is very developed and rich. It is. But these women told him stories that were so similar to the stories that we were hearing from the women in Kosovo. Poverty, childhood spent in the mountains, tending to the livestock, a lack of schools, starting working very early, being married to someone they didn't know. It's the same stories, because I guess peasants are the same all over the world. And he called the book The Strongest Link, L'anello più forte. So the strongest link in the chain, the human chain, I guess. These women who we tend to see sometimes as victims have an incredible reservoir of strength that keeps them going even after they go through what they go through. Build families, being excellent mothers, excellent wives, going through life with enormous strength. So the strength is what is in the...
All right. In a world that often focuses on weakness or division, why was it important for you to focus on strength and connection?
So, I mean, it's not that we only ourselves came up with the idea of a book. We were, as one of the activists in the book tells us early on, these women want us to, the survivors want us to write this book. So it's about documenting their stories. It's about showing, as Anna said, not only to show them, for not identify them or not define them by what happened to them, but also to show that they had lives before the war. They may not have been easy lives, but they had lives nonetheless, and how they transformed over time. It was important to meet them, ordinary lives, and show how they lived through this war, how they survived these wars. Even the names are not the actual names, but in a way you can see the story of the war through the resilience and through the strength, as Anna said, of these women, and the way they help other refugees, the way they pull up their everything, all their resources to make food for their kids so that they can keep their families going at the hardest times and the hardest circumstances. So it felt like, it's a story, we connected to them, and it felt like this is a story that needed to be shared because it showed something very human, very universal. I mean, it wasn't happening only to these women. It's happening to women everywhere. It happens to women everywhere that, that we haven't found a better way to prevent, with all the legal systems, with all the international systems, we still haven't found a way to prevent this horrendous crime. And it was important that this book documents what that feels like, what that looks like, ultimately show a very sort of a human connection. You can build a connection through these stories with these survivors.
As we know, Tina, you used to work like a journalist. How did your individual background or experiences shape the book? Did you get something from your background?
A lot, actually. I was unfortunate to sort of not choose to. I mean, I wanted to be a reporter, but I also wanted to be a lawyer. So I would have preferred to have been a lawyer. But in 1997, 1998, when Kosovo's first independent newspaper was opened, I became a reporter sort of almost by accident, because that was, something that I felt, I could contribute to. I come from a family of journalists and writers, and so it felt like a natural profession to fall into. But my first assignment was really the war, so I didn't have much choice there. I covered the war. We think we have this conversation with Anna, this is the favorite conversation we have. When did the war actually start? Was it on the 28th of February of 1998 when when families in Shiraz and Likoshan were killed? Or was it on 24th of March of 1999 when NATO's bombing began? So for me, war began in 1998, in February of 1998. It's been like, that's the story that I covered the war. That was my first assignment, the KLA, and understand what their demands were, how Kosovo was preparing for war. So we were not, it was a familiar trajectory that we fell into, and we reported on it. I came with a lot of background to these women. I had been to their villages where they lived, the villages where they had been attacked, where they had been chased from. So I knew of their lives. This was not foreign to me. I'm from Kosovo, so I grew up there. So it was very important for me to sit with them and to sort of, create that connection in the interview and say, hey, I know what happened. I know what happened in your village. I know, and have these joint references. It helped me connect with them, and also for them to know that I could be someone they could trust, their story.
How about you, Anna? Anna, sorry.
Okay, when the war started, I didn't even know that Kosovo existed. I just had no idea that there was a place called Kosovo. I knew Yugoslavia, but not Kosovo. And I was sitting in my office. I was a journalist at the time, and the TV was on, and there was the Lewinsky scandal, Monica Lewinsky scandal, and I was interrupted because all of a sudden there was this river of people that were pushed out of the border, and all the refugees that, so this was the 24th of March. This is when I understood that Kosovo existed. So there was the 24th of March, 1999. And because I've been following of course, the Bosnian War, and I really felt that something had to be done, and not that I could do anything, but something had to be done to stop Serbs. So I decided to find a job that would put me there in Kosovo, not as a journalist, but as someone who could help them. So I got a job with the UN, the World Food Program, that distributed food in the refugee camps, and I moved to the refugee camps in Cook. So my first approach was, and I started hearing stories, but my focus was not on the sexual violence, on the violence, and more on how do we get there? How do we get there? Well, helping people, but also how do we get there, and why the war started, and who were in the KLA, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and to make it short, I went to Kosovo the first time on 13 June 1999. So the day the war ended, I went in with the German K4. German NATO troops, went to Pristin. And I spent the summer of 1999 going everywhere in Kosovo by helicopter, because there were mines on the road, so it was difficult to travel. So with the UN, we went everywhere by helicopters, mostly Dugajin and Drenica, because that's what the destruction had happened. And there were places that couldn't be reached. One of the villages where the woman come from, one of the women the Tina interviewed, is Zatrich. Yeah. And we found Zatrich. We were flying with this helicopter in that area, and the security guard was with us said, wait a second, look at this village. And it was completely razed to the ground. All the houses were destroyed. So let's see who's there. Someone is there. So we went there, and people started coming out, I don't know from where. They were there. And they were also, again, like I say, it's not just that the women are strong in Kosovo, the men are too. It was an extremely moving moment for me, and very definitive for my connection with Kosovo, because they had nothing left. The houses were destroyed. They didn't have any food, so we brought flour and sugar. And their son was coming back by car from Germany. He had gone from Germany to Italy and then Albania. Maybe the story. It was very difficult to get to Kosovo, and he just arrived, and they were hugging. He arrived and we arrived by helicopter, and they had nothing to offer. And this woman offered me an egg, an hard-boiled egg. And I was like, an egg? What do I do with this? And then I slowly understood that they were actually offering me what they didn't have. So the most important thing for them was the egg, because they didn't have eggs, and they offered it to me. With the hospitality, that the people who give you what they don't have, what is most precious. And that was a little... for me, establish a connection with Kosovo that was never broken since then.
We made a friend, in other words.
Lifetime friend. You mentioned that you felt the responsibility to write the stories, to kind of tell their stories. And Anna had this vision of becoming a book. But was there a specific moment or story that became the foundation of the book?
Talk a bit.
Yeah.
There is okay, all the names are not real names. Okay, so we protected the anonymity of the privacy of these women. We don't write where they come from. We don't say the villages. We don't even say how many siblings they have, because people could guess the family. So we need to come up with a way of identifying them. And Tina had this very brilliant idea. She said, why don't we give the name that was more used or more popular for that generation? And
so if someone was born in 1974, you go to the registry of the census, you look what was the most popular name, what did people name their kids. So there's a lot of Shqiponia. Those are the names that people responded to. A lot of Vloras, a lot of, Sarandas. So this was a patriotic, people were doing something, they were resisting by naming their kids with very sort of Albanian names to resist the assimilation that was coming by force from Belgrade. So,
but then we have this one is born a little bit earlier, so
Yeah.
closer to the war generation, and her name was Ganimete. Ganimete is the most important person in the whole book. If you read it, you will see it. She's absolutely extraordinary. We love her. She's become a friend. And so that's the Ganimete story. Ganimete's husband was killed. She was pregnant, a difficult pregnancy. I was in the hospital in Peja, and that was actually the time was it was a shootout between a KLA and Serbs, because KLA went to rescue one of their comrades that was in the hospital, and Mirvete Maksuta is actually was a woman leading the attack, a woman KLA fighter. She was killed in the attack, and in that shootout, one of the doctors was killed. So doctors and nurses went to the maternity ward. Actually, it was a gynecologist who was killed, and beat up the women who were there, the Albanian women who were there. And Ganimete got an abortion. She miscarried the child.
Very late into the pregnancy.
They were very late, but it was a difficult pregnancy. That's why she was in the hospital, despite the fact that the hospital was sorry, but she was losing the baby. That's why she was there. So they managed to extract them the next day from 3-4 women from the hospital, stop again at the checkpoint, and they were held for 3 days. I don't have to go into detail about what happened to them. And when she was finally free because she said at one point the shooting subsided. There was no more noise. So she said they must have left. And they left this prison in which they had been kept for 3 days. Ganimete has an incredible story, and she's the one that really explained to us in the most clear possible way what the women go through, the stigmatization that they suffer from, the lack of justice, how much they want to fight for justice, and how much they believe in their rights. So she is like a full, I think she went through different stages. Now she's in the stage also of anger. And she seeks justice, so it's a good sign. It's a good sign.
What core message do you hope your readers take away from the strongest link in the end when they're going to read the book?
I mean, for me, it's really important that they read the book, that they know that this happened, because there's been a lot of silence over the issue of sexual violence in the Kosovo War. It's not recognized as widely in the literature. It's not recognized as widely in the UN documents. It's not documented well at all, even though we had the international community in Kosovo from 99 through independence. We had very little sort of justice served to the victims, to the survivors on this question. So if there's one thing we can do is read the book, so that these stories, we did what we could to document them, there's only 20 stories. I hope that there will be more. There's been some books published in Kosovo as well, in Albanian. There's media that do their part in Kosovo to bring awareness on this issue. But as readers, as ordinary people going about our lives, the single most important thing we can do is read and not let this issue slip away. It's been documented. It needs to be more documented even further. In my view, if we document it enough, there will be justice. These women want justice. And it's been 25 years, but they haven't seen justice. And this is one of those things that needs to be resolved. It needs, the society itself needs to embrace it in Kosovo. But I think it's as important that the international community, I want to say, for whatever that means today, however we define it, needs to know that this crime took place. Because only when we acknowledge it, perhaps we will start doing something about it. We see it happening in Ukraine. We see it happening in other conflicts around the world. If it's pulled under the rug all the time, we will never find a solution for it. We will never be able to prevent it. And you will see that how many lives were not lived to their full capacity because of this crime, because of this horrendous crime that was happened on women and men in Kosovo.
Let me read just a little bit. Ganimete. So what Ganimete? Ganimete says, I have zero hope in justice. Very honestly, I don't. We don't have hope in international or domestic justice. Some time ago, we met with this prosecutor for war crime. I'm serious, who complained, you don't have many witnesses. You don't have witnesses. I said, we have 25 witnesses. She said, they aren't enough. Do 25 seem few to you? I'd say, start with this. We are in peacetime now, but in the event of a murder, shouldn't I tell you, you are a prosecutor, that there was a crime? And would you answer, I need 100 cases to put together a dossier? We are more and more disillusioned. And this is a problem that, people tend to underestimate the extent, the extent of this crime in Kosovo. It was widespread and systematic. They tend to underestimate it because not many people come forward and tell their stories. And they don't come and tell their stories for all sorts of reasons that,
what do you think? We didn't do much, or international community didn't do much for those cases?
I think it works both ways. The society needs to create the conditions in which survivors, witnesses can come forward and feel that they have the space to press charges against the perpetrators. And I don't think they felt that way in Kosovo after the war. And I don't think they feel that way for various reasons. Some of them are explained really eloquently in the book, why they don't come forward to share their stories. Some just felt like at the end of the war, they felt like they survived. So other members of their family did not. So somehow their pain was lesser than the pain of those having to recover from the deaths of, whole families in Kosovo. So they felt their pain mattered less, and they didn't press charges. But in other cases, the families did not want the survivors to speak up because they thought that they would bring shame to their families. So it works both ways. But we have an obligation to create, perhaps we cannot control what happened. We can't control what Serbia did to these women, right? But we can control how we as a society, how Kosovo as a society responds to the survivors. How does it help them deal with this trauma, it's a collective trauma. I mean, we're talking about 25,000 women are believed to have been raped during the Kosovo War, men too. So it's a huge number, but even if the number is smaller than that, does it make a difference?
As Ganimete says, it doesn't make any difference, but we're talking about thousands and thousands of people. Everyone, friends who read this book, they do find it hard. It's hard to read. Okay, it's hard to read. It's painful to read, but we really would like you to read it. One of the women said, we feel like a sack of garbage that people don't want in the house. And that's also something that makes them feel bad, because nobody wants to hear what happened to them, because it's pretty awful.
If I may add, Anita,
Sure.
I also we have been in this journey with Anna for over 10 years now, 15 years. So I do want to recognize, I do want to acknowledge that a lot of things have changed in Kosovo for the better. There's more awareness, there's more acceptance, there's a generation of young people, they're kids of the survivors who are coming out and embracing their mothers and embracing their dads, helping them come out publicly to talk about this so that other people find the strength to come forward. So the place has changed. Institutionally, Kosovo has done an amazing job to respond to this. They have created a commission to register the cases, to pay a pension. The survivors face a lot of ills, including their health. The health problems are many. So what they do, the Kosovo institutions have found a way to give reparations, although they shouldn't be giving reparations technically. It should be, Serbia to pay reparations. But Kosovo recognizes the need to come to the rescue, to come to the aid of the survivors, and understanding that they are an integral part of the story of the war. So they have addressed these questions. The problem, however, still remains within the small unit of the family. It is there that we have to meet the survivors. It is there that we have to create the base of support that will empower them to move, to basically turn the chapter.
And if may add, internationally, we sent the book to Sir Geoffrey Nice, who was the chief prosecutor at The Hague of Milosevic. And he wrote us a very good comment. Starts, this book puts men and women to shame. And in a private email, he also wrote us that he felt ashamed because during the prosecution of Milosevic, international justice was not prepared at all to address this issue, to support the witnesses, to find they were not as important as the mass killing, as the other stuff. And he feels very guilty. So that's.
I think still we can do it more.
To connect with the conversation, there are a lot of NGOs that did a lot of work, this woman, and you have acknowledged that in your book. But we are all glad that it's finally getting support from the state, and the state is being more organized, and it's getting to different levels that hopefully will help. But also, there's another issue that you brought this very well in the beginning of the book, the discussion about the culture itself, how we were brought up as Albanians with all the family values. And it's a part of that we didn't discuss our issues in hopes that not discussing them will make them go away or get resolved on their own. And this is a big part of this, that they feel this shame of talking that out, especially with the family. Because as you said, it's very important to get that support from the close circle to be able to go out there and feel and be more powerful.
You acknowledge circle, reten,
Definitely.
as a very important.
Yes, it is very important in our society, in our culture. Now, the book highlights strongly the resilience and human connection. How do these themes show up in real life today? How do you see them?
Well, the strongest link is not just the victims or survivors. The strongest links are all the women who work with them for 20 years, because they've been certainly marginalized and isolated, but there are NGOs of women's rights, and they've been working with them, providing psychosocial services, health services, incredible support. And we should name them because, there is Kosovo Women's Network, you work with them.
Yes.
There is the Kosovo Center for Rehabilitation of Torture. There is a center, there is Center for the Promotion of the Rights of Women and Girls in Drena, Kadire Tairai, Feride Rushiti is the Center for Rehabilitation of Torture. There is Medica Jakova in Jakova with Linda Sada. There is Medica Kosovo with Lola Veprore Shehu. So, I mean, these people have really helped them in very substantive ways with therapists, gynecologists, many of the survivors have huge health problems. There are physical problems besides mental. And so they need an enormous amount of help, and they have given to them because, as you know, in Kosovo there is no health insurance. So if you don't have, if you need this kind of services, you need to pay with your own money. And many of these people are poor. The women we interviewed are poor. They don't have that kind of money. This is something that has been going on, and we should acknowledge. And that's why they were able to talk to us, because they already gone through years of therapy. And we know, in other research, we continue to work on this issue, that there are now groups organized as self-help groups. They don't need the therapist. They meet, and they talk to each other, and they are fine. And for them, it is a very important moment to be among themselves. They can talk freely. They don't have to hide anything. And they can also talk about something else, like a problem that they have at home, or going to the hairdresser, because we don't have to talk about this all the time, because they also moved on a little bit, you know. So that's something that's really been working well. And certain intervention by President Yayaga, who you can talk about the trip to the sea.
Yes,
Small things.
Small things. It's always the small things that create, you know, the crack where the light comes in, you know. And so she, in her case, I mean, she, being the first woman president, created that opening for the survivors to come to her and just be able to voice and just sort of say, this is what happened during the war. Can you please help us? We're in a dire condition, you know, we're not accepted by the society. This is not acknowledged by anyone. Can you do something for us? And, you know, they were as explicit as showing the signs of, you know, of the signs of torture, because this is actually torture. I mean, we call it rape, but it's torture. So the signs to the president, and of course the president felt very compelled to you know, as the first woman president, to also take steps, concrete steps with the organizations that Anna mentioned to actually, you know, do something. It's not over. And as I said, I mean, the important work still continues. It continues every day. It has for the 26 years since the end of the war. What's been important for us to see is also to see some of the people that we've interviewed and we've known over the years. Now they themselves go to villages, in their villages and their community. They've expanded the circle. They reach out to other survivors who have not come forward and encourage them to do so. And this has been, I think there's no more act that is more empowering than to give survivors that ability to go out and find other survivors and, you know, bring them to the, you know, bring them into this community where they can seek help and where they can actually find help. So it's been, you know, to see this growth. I mean, of course, all of us, I think, in this room wish that it didn't have to happen this way, right? But it's also something very, very emotional to see people actually coming out of these situations stronger, you know, or finding strength to move on.
And they just want to, there was the special trip to Durrës.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
President Yayaga organized a simple weekend of how many of them? A lot.
Yeah, I don't remember. 200, yeah,
200,
like that.
200.
Yeah,
so organized buses, and they went to Durrës for the weekend. It was fabulous. They still talk about that. Happened 4 years ago. It was the first time they saw the sea for many people. Many of them saw the sea for the first time then. And they had such a good time. See, it will take so little to make their life much better, and much easier. So that's something that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, can you share examples from the book that you feel deeply connected to it?
I mean, I feel very connected to the chapter on the war because I've lived through it myself and documented as a journalist. So that's like one chapter, but it's the whole thread. Like you see, you know, because of the way Anna came up with the idea of, you know, doing oral histories with the survivors, because I was a reporter, so my inclination is to interview people. You know, I do that for a living, to interview people, but not necessarily that I had the time to sit down and talk to people about how their lives were, how they grew up, what what their families felt like, what were their rooms like, what did they do, where did they go to school. In this book, because of oral history and because we refuse to see them only as survivors of sexual violence, they narrate their lives, how they went to school and how that was like the best thing that happened to in their lives. And then as they grow up, and with Yugoslavia's destruction in the background, you see how their normal lives unravel, right? You see how schools from these happy places become rape camps, and how they get burned and eventually rebuilt. And now it's that whole trajectory, I think, that it makes it very personal for me, at least makes the war very vivid again. So war is like a chapter that stays with me, that I've also, as a reporter, it gives like a detailed description of how the war started, what was happening, say in Prekaz, which I witnessed on 5th of March of 1998, and how that event was seen by, say, Edona, one of the survivors, by her eyes. Like, what was she experiencing? As I was reporting, say, on Prekaz, this Yashari family was being killed in Prekaz, how did a woman in a village in Kosovo named Edona live through this period? So I think that's, for me, the war really brings it, to the fore. Insecurity as well. This notion of what is secure, or what is a safe place. We think of schools as a safe place mostly, and we think of hospitals also as a place where you go to seek help. And these, instead, in war, with the women of these books, these are the places probably of the highest insecurity, because this is where they're raped. They're raped in schools, in hospitals.
Okay,
Yes.
on a different note, I'll tell you what really fired me up, and it was the silence. So there is a chapter called Silences, because it's not just one silence, there's several types of silences. And let me start from what a woman told us. This is the end of the book, the very end of the book, because we say, well, they don't talk, so how do we know what happened to them? And she says, I want to decide with whom I talk, and I talk with those whom I consider worthy. Now, for example, you met me to do something. It's still difficult for me to talk to you, but I've decided to tell you what happened in my life. So people do talk. People talk to people. People talk to those they trust. But one silences, Tina mentioned it already, immediately after the horrible things happen to them, they don't talk because they're in shock. They don't talk because other people in the families have been killed, and they say, okay, I survived. It's worse for them. Then they are told it would be better if you were dead. And so it's pushed them already in a corner. Then they don't talk because there is a shame and the sense of guilt that actually is common to every victim everywhere. What happened, victim here in New York, even in domestic violence, they all feel guilty. It's a psychological process. It's hard for us to think about it, because how can they be guilty? But they feel guilty. But what really for me was very interesting, how the silences works out in Kosovo, in the system of the family, in the social world that is Kosovo. And actually, one explanation was given to me by Nazliye Bala. Nazliye Bala tells this kind of interesting story. So as a human rights defender, Nazliye Bala was investigating an ethnic murder in a rural community when she learned this lesson: don't talk. They are told, don't talk. When they're about to get married, the mother says, don't talk. In the new family, just don't talk. So she is allowed, so Nazliye goes to this place where there's been a murder, and she's allowed in the Oda, the men's room. She was joined by the grandmother of the family, who was called to keep her company. When Nazliye asked her to say something, the grandma replied, what do I have to say? When I was little, they told me, be silent. You are too young to speak. When I grew up a little and reached puberty, they said, be silent, because it's shameful if you talk. When I got married, they told me, you, as a woman in the FIS, cannot talk. When I got older, they told me, be silent because you don't know anything, you're stupid. So the women, the survivors who talk to us come from this world, from this impoverished rural world. It's obviously things are changing now, and in the city are a little different. But in the countryside, in the villages, that's the situation. That's a life, and that's the lesson.
Yeah.
That's the lesson that these women receive. And so the silence, and also the silence, Tina mentioned it. There's a woman who really said, everyone knew, my father knew, my brothers knew, but nobody talked about, so nobody knew. She says it this way: if you don't talk about, you don't know. So they know and they don't know, and nobody talks about it, and it becomes a real burden for the survivors. And if you allow me, the last one is back to Ganymede. Ganymede marries someone else after here, and this is what marries someone else. She moves to another village, and she's not really doesn't really understand all the words that belong to the dialect of this new place. And so she says, I was always judged. They never wanted to be with me. They wanted to be with the others. They very often treated me like a crazy person, even my family, my husband's closest Rethi. Whenever I said something, they said, leave her alone. She suffered a lot during the war. The moment I asked for something that was my right, the moment I said anything or went to a social gathering, if someone said something and I said, no, it's not like this, but like that, because I wanted to participate in the conversation as an equal, they said, leave her alone. Maybe she says that because she suffered during the war. I did not want to let them say that about me. I didn't want to be always linked to that war, and I did not want to be connected with that past. I wanted to be told, yes, good, you're right if it's what you think. Anytime people in my husband's Rethi use a word I didn't know because I'm from another village and we have a different dialect, for example, if they said, Oshkolden, whatever, Oshbalden, so it's like when we say, Turkish for welcome, they would say, she doesn't know that word because she suffered a lot during the war. I knew that somebody respected me for what I suffered, but nobody in my village used the word Oshkolden. Do you understand? Everybody connected me to the war. And the worst is that I felt very bad. On an everyday basis, I always felt very bad. Because they don't know, they don't talk about it, but they always remind you.
Thank you for sharing.
But I think there's also something to be said about sort of culturally also wanting to move on from this chapter. How many of us actually talk of our personal experiences during the war with our families? We don't want to burden the person sitting next to us all the time, right? We don't want to tell the next generation, our kids, because we don't want to burden them. We don't want to tell our mothers because they had a hard life and we don't want to burden them further. So there's also this aspect, I think, of the silence, if you wish.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the reading. To lighten the conversation a little bit, we knew it was a heavy topic, but talking it out loud, it brings different kind of emotions.
And it's their voices, not our voices.
Yeah.
You know, someone says, some say, you gave voices to them. No, they gave voices to us because we couldn't write this if they didn't say so. In the book, we use as much as possible their voices.
Thank you. What was like co-authoring this book? How could you come up with one cohesive story?
You go.
No, I don't know. I mean, I did what I do best, I think, at least in this project, which is to interview. I think I sat for hours on end with the survivors, trying to be, trying to meet them, understand what life was to be in their shoes. I mean, for me, it's not completely disconnected because I'm proudly from Kosovo. I know that society inside out. So naturally, like that's the sort of the position I had in this project, interviewing the survivors, helping them as much as I could, sharing in their grief. Many times I didn't shy away from that. I think we were the sympathetic listeners in this project together. We had this commitment from the beginning that we wanted to. We felt like we had the means to do this. We you know. I don't have Anna's knowledge to be able to weave together, the academic depth that went into this book, but I did my part in what I professionally could do, which is to interview the survivors.
What
She
surprise?
always sells herself short. That's not true, because we planned the book together.
Yes.
Every the whole map of the book was discussed and planned together, and then one person has to write with. It's not like the piano that you can play beforehand.
What surprise?
Sorry, but before we move on to the next question, I just want to mention, when you said the depth, I just want to mention this part. We had this conversation earlier. For whoever that doesn't have any idea about the war or Kosovo in general, the depth of the way you describe the living, the politics, the economics, the poverty, and why it happened, and the education, I never saw this in any other book. So I complimented you earlier, and I want to say this publicly again. There's such a depth on the whole, like the whole structure of society, the way you described it. Thank you.
And Kadire Tahire, who's a wonderful woman activist from Drenas, said it very clearly to us, and it's in the book. She said, you cannot write the history of the Kosovo War if there is no chapter on sexual violence. And actually, I think when we were writing it, it really came through that you need to understand. You need to understand this, because the sexual violence was really the product of an understanding of nation and the other nation, the opposite nation, in gendered, in sexual terms. And the way the war has been prepared by the Serbian propaganda in Kosovo was deeply sexualized. In fact, there is one woman who knows that, it's Sevdije Ahmeti. Yeah. The late, she died a few years ago. She was also a great activist. And she does say at the beginning, she says that in the 90s, this is going to be a war against women. So,
and we feel very much that the book is an explanation of how this was a war. I mean, the whole war, as I think, quote Roy Gutman here, who says he said, I think, for the war in Bosnia was a war crime masquerading as war. And I think here too, like, this is a war on women. And in the next chapters in this book, you understand how this was a war on women.
Did writing The Strongest Link change you personally?
Oh, yes. Of course it did. I mean, I have a very hard time going back to doing short interviews. That's for one. So now everything has to be an oral history, and I have to understand everybody's context, and when I'm doing the interviews. But other than that, I think it has made it into it has made the fight against this crime and the thinking about this crime, it has made it a lifelong mission. I think if I can and if I will, and if I have enough in me, I will continue to fight so that this horrendous crime, is prevented in whatever small way. I mean, probably unsuccessfully, because it hasn't been prevented so far, but whatever I can do to bring some justice, and with little steps like this, documentation, whatever, to the survivors.
It's a lot. It's not just, it's a lot.
Were there any moments where you challenged each other's perspectives? And how did that strengthen the final one?
No, we always agree. Yeah, we agree.
We agree.
Mostly agreed. Okay.
I mean, she's also a professor, so I'm like, do I really go into a fight with a professor? I don't think so.
No, I think also I'm very pushy. I'm very pushy, and I work very hard. And this is my only work. And I write, I teach, I read. And sometimes I forget that people have children and a life. And so I pushed in, and we need to work more, we need to do faster. So maybe that's but
Oh,
we
but
agree on everything.
we agree. I mean, this is also a story. We really have seen this come together from a very personal point of view. When you know the survivors, you feel a responsibility to them to tell, to be the vessel through which they tell the story.
All right. I know this whole book, it was hard to write. It was hard to tell. But was there any like particular story or chapter that was like more emotional or heavier to get into, to put it on paper, to tell it, whatever you name it?
It's very hard
I
to
guess
find
the
just
war.
one. They are
Yeah.
all.
They're heartbreaking. I mean,
I guess the war.
Yeah, the war.
The war. We try not to give details, but then you need to explain what happened. Otherwise, so we didn't want that to be the center of the book, but you need to tell what happened, and without being descriptive, without giving details, without being too graphic. So there always being a very difficult balance, difficult to write in that sense. But I think when you do work like this, you just feel so committed. And for me, the worst part of was that it took so long to publish it. It took 5 years. This book was finished very. One person died in the meanwhile. One person was interviewed, because it's also it's a hard book to sell publishers, because because nobody wants to read it. But it's incredible that the resistance that we found, and we were very lucky that Oxford finally published it. But it was a long process, and sometimes painful, because we felt we were betraying those women. I mean, it's not like this is not something that give us money. This is not something I'm in the end of my career. This doesn't need the book to be promoted. I'm not retiring, but it was really it's the commitment that we had to these women. They said we want our stories to be out somewhere else, not in Kosovo, out, and it wasn't coming out. So that was hard.
Acknowledgement remains a very big component of what they want, what the survivors want, and this was one way that they want to be acknowledged internationally. That that these stories happen, because you can only imagine what it might feel like if someone contests your story all the time, and that is what's happening to them. It's been happening for 26 years, so of course they want to tell this story, and I'm glad that it made it into a book. I hope people will read it, despite the readers will find these experiences. I mean, they're extraordinary, but at the same time, I think both Anna and I feel very strongly academically to discuss rape as a weapon of war. Not something that the academia at large agrees with. I think we've gone to great lengths, also like in other works, to explain what this means. That it's not a political term. It's actually something that took place. That rape was a weapon of war. It was a tool in the toolbox of the Serbian forces that that pillaged, that murdered 10,000 people in Kosovo, more than 10,000 people in Kosovo, civilians. So that's also a mission for us to understand how is this tool used against the civilian population? What are the contexts? What lessons can we draw from it? How can we advance human knowledge on this? So it goes also not just documenting the stories. It goes also beyond the strongest link as a book of oral histories.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We would also like, if you have any questions from the audience, feel free. We believe we covered pretty much all the book.
We're happy to.
If you do.
All right.
Congratulations on having written such an important book, and really impressed. You mentioned the reticence to talk, and especially the people wanting to spare their children. I've done some research into this from a different perspective, the Jewish Holocaust during the Second World War. And I'm wondering, are you contemplating another work that talks to those children who are, because there is that trauma of the next generation, and I'm wondering if you have more thoughts about those children, and as I said, whether you're thinking about interviewing them or whether you'd rather spare them too. I don't know.
It's so interesting you ask this question. There's actually studies being done on intergenerational trauma in Kosovo as we speak with the kids of survivors. We touched upon it on a study we did together with Anna. We're not contemplating another book as far as I know. She may decide
not on this.
otherwise. Not on this. She's writing, you can tell.
I'm writing about KLA fighters, women fighters.
Yeah.
Women who had a gun in their hands.
Oh, let's explain the KLA for the ones that are watching the video and they don't know that.
So the KLA was the Kosovo Liberation Army. It was was a guerrilla group, armed group, that fought against Serbian police and army for the liberation of Kosovo from Serbia, from Kosovo independence, maybe unity with Albania. Anyway, getting out of Yugoslavia. and we don't know how many people participated in these groups. We know that there were the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, registered about 25,000 fighters at the end of the war. And of these, 875 were women. And half of these women were between 14 and 18.
Wow.
So 400 women who were fighters in the KLA were adolescents. So that's a very interesting, for me, it's a very interesting group now to study.
And just to give you some perspective, like I said, about 20,000 women are believed, and this is according to the US CDC, the projections that were done in 99, 20,000 women, the estimate was 20,000 women were raped in Kosovo. There's a commission that registered about 2,000 that have come forward to say so. Out of those, 4 cases have spoken publicly so far. One of them, an Albanian American, another an Albanian Canadian, so someone who moved away from Kosovo, a man who came out just recently with the help of his family, actually with the help of his daughter, who said, can you please, just share your story, maybe it will help other people come forward. And a woman who actually pressed charges, and she passed away before she could see any witness, any tuna, any justice done. So it's still remains a very sort of silenced issue. But it's been very interesting to see in these 2 cases with the Albanian Canadian woman and the latest, the man, the survivor, to see their kids come forward and also speak about intergenerational trauma. We've done a study in which we touched the issue of intergenerational trauma. The survivors are so worried that they have passed the trauma on to their kids. There's various ways that they discuss this. Sometimes they are worried that they've been too anxious, too angry, too sad, and that has impacted the way they've raised their children. So there's this feeling of guilt that is, continues to accumulate on the survivors for this as well. I mean, we all have work to do. I've lived for 8 years in Jerusalem, so I've kind of also seen the other side of this, where people speak, more openly about the experience of the Holocaust. And I hope that Kosovo will come to that point too, where they can speak of this experience as a lesson for the future, as a lesson of, something to understand, better what happens, how do you go from peace to a situation like that, as a lesson for the future. Yeah.
And maybe about this we should add that only now, how many years since World War II? 80, no more, 80 years after World War II, the first studies are coming out about the sexual violence during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Never talked about that.
So it's not exceptional maybe that Kosovo Albanian survivors did not say anything about it. It's a painful topic to discuss. But yes, we all have work to do on how do we tell this story to the next generation.
Okay. Anybody else? We have one more.
I didn't put that there too, I think.
First, congratulations for this book. I know that both of you have worked for a long, long time on the survivors. As one of the survivors of the war, did you ever tackle also the issue of the threatened by others, by family members that they cannot
Talk? Oh yeah, it's all in the book. It's all in the book. I think it says it all. With there's families who tell their daughters it would have been better if you died. So I mean, you can only imagine what went on there. So, but we have, in order to improve our society, we also have to be critical to some of its parts. So this is one of those, and I think in my case, I think it was the surprising element in this research, if you want, in these interviews, to find out that aspect of our society.
Thank you so much. One more?
Yeah. First off, congratulations again, and thank you for writing this book. You already said a story of the war without describing the sexual violence. Doesn't tell the story of the war. What struck me was, well, first off, working in Kosovo, knowing the women in Kosovo, some of the strongest people in Kosovo are their women.
Our women.
Our women.
Okay, thanks.
But also, with so many people who dealt with this trauma, such a small handful of people came out and spoke. So, Pasifia was mentioned, and then
Shuhreta.
yeah, and then since 2018, no other voices came out.
Ramadan.
Oh, Ramadan, right?
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, do you think that the lens of wartime or sexual violence terms wartime allowed the telling of the problem of sexual violence in general, or made it easier to pass that stigma, to overcome the stigma within the culture?
Kosovo has been really quick in acknowledging this issue after the war. If you think about widespread rapes in Italy after the Battle of Monte Cassino in 1944, first time they talk about this was 1994, 50 years later. The massive rape of German women in Berlin by the Red Army, and by the way, also Serbian women by the Red Army. There is a story in a conversation with Tito. I mean, there was like Tito and Stalin, a book by Banac. It's Milovan Đilas. After the war, the Yugoslav Serbs tell Stalin, you should just stop the Red Army from doing what they're doing, and he just said, oh, these are boys, they need to let some steam off. So that's Stalin. But the Red Army was pretty awful in Yugoslavia too. But so this happened in 1944. Also, we talked about that in 2001. 2001 was the book and the film A Woman in Berlin came out and brought up again the story of the rapes in Berlin. So it took a long time. It always takes a long time. It takes less now. But Bosnia didn't take much because the Bosnian survivors went from Bosnia. They went to Zagreb, and they're feminists there. It was 1992. Were feminists already, network of European feminists supporting them. That is the first case against a Bosnian rapist in Brooklyn. Won. It was a civil case. The case was presented by Catherine McKinnon, a famous feminist lawyer. In 1993, they won a civil case against a Bosnian rapist. So, I mean, that was pretty fast. And Kosovo has been also like 17 years, seems a long time, but it isn't. No, it isn't.
And I want to say that it's not like they were completely silent. I think this is also what we need to acknowledge, in the sense that they did come forward. They just choose not to say it publicly. So I think it's important to acknowledge that they have shared their stories, especially in the last, I think since Thinking of You, this became, because the lens of the angle on which the way media were covering this issue also changed. There was a shift there. So women and men came they shared their stories, but they chose how to share their stories. So there were some conditions placed, especially around their identity. So the society cannot say that they didn't know. The stories are widespread in the media, but they just what made it different is that they did not come out with their faces and their names, right? They had to conceal their identity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you to our hosts. Thank you so much for
very
the
much.
invitation.